starting up this one, and we're not certain whether, there's a fully painted flag underneath it. Just as much as whatever there's another fully painted flag underneath that one, right? So, again, a question of arithmetic. 1 flag, 3 flags, no flags. You get that? Okay. So there you have it, right? Fountain. But we know that part of the import of Duchamp's ready-mades lies not necessarily exactly in their ability to move from the everyday to the world of art, as is often talked about. He elevated the everyday object and placed it in the realm of art. He did do that, but in doing that, never lost the connection back to the everyday. I think it's really important for us to not lose sight of the fact that the importance of the ready-made is that it is this switching back and forth. It's like the duck-rabbit drawing, if you know the famous duck-rabbit drawing. You look at it one way, it looks like a duck. You look at it again, it's the same drawing, it looks like a rabbit. Right? Same thing here. Fountain, urinal. Urinal, fountain. And I think if you lose sight of the fact that this was originally, and to all intents and purposes still is a urinal, you really lose half of the ready-made, right? How radical it is, how not only in terms of what it's doing to our notions of the work of art, but also maybe to our notions of the drinking fountain. Because, if suddenly a urinal is a fountain, that's a different kind of drinking. And of course, Rene Magritte's, this is not a pipe, right? So it's almost as though with the Jasper Johns iconic images, you can write the same kind of phrase underneath, right? This is a flag. This isn't a flag. It's just a painting, right? Same thing here. Looks like a pipe. It's an iconic image of a pipe. But it's not a pipe. You can't smoke it. So here's one of these works by Johns from the early 60s, 1963, entitled Periscope. One of the things we can point out, which is a continuation of some of the points we've been making, is his combination, his interest in combining that expressive brushstroke, right, that sort of abstract expressionist brushstroke, the kind of thing that you would see in a Willem de Kooning or a Frans Klein painting, to combine that with the very generic, anonymous, non-authorial, prefabricated, ready-made stencil form, right, of the letters that make up words, which in this case spell out colors, which in some instances, in their own coloration, find a one-to-one correspondence, like the blue at the bottom there, right, here. That looks like a blue color, so it's the word blue, painted blue. But then up here you've got red, and that's in black. Yellow goes off in various chromatic directions. So he's playing with these kinds of signifying modalities, right? The word blue versus the color blue, the way the word blue signifies or represents eye color, and the way in which the painting of that blue word, those letters that spell out the word blue, can take the color that they signify. Right? So sometimes what we're saying is there's a contradiction between the graphic sign, the numeral, the letter, the word, in its visual form and its signifying function. Right? Red is painted with black paint, blue painted with blue paint. There you see the handprint. So again, we understand these body prints as indexes, which in this case also seems to function as an instrument or device, a tool. This physical, natural body part, right, as an instrument, device, or tool for tracing a circular shape, as though the hand is a compass. Right? We see it there emerging from the midpoint of this arc, the semicircle, and extending out to its outer limit. And we might imagine that the black paint that was used to make the handprint is in tension with the very white of that outer edge of that semicircle. So again, playing with, well, what caused that trace? What caused that mark to be made? Could have been the handprint, could have been some other device, a paintbrush, somehow related to the author in one way or another, right? And so again, this is the way in which Leo Steinberg, writing on Jasper Johns' surfaces as palimpsest layers of inscription and the accumulation of signs and images, objects, finds something similar here to what he found in Robert Rauschenberg's work, that is the notion of the flatbed picture print. So we'll just cycle through a few more of these by Johns. These next two from 1959. This is his device circle. So indeed, there we see the ready-made object, the found object that's incorporated into the painting to suggest that perhaps it really was used as a compass. It's right there in the center, and you could spin it around, and it would create that circle. Not to say that it actually did, right? We don't know. And then you have the stencil again, stenciled letters. And again, moving painting from image to object, and maybe from object to a particular kind of object, a device or instrument. Maybe what we have here is the picture and the name for a new kind of painting that we could call device circle or circular device, right? And of course, the target is a circular device. Or here, thermometer, 1959. The Fahrenheit degree system of gradations. An actual thermometer running down the middle of the canvas. Expressionist brushstrokes. Stenciled numbers. As though we're meant to understand this as Johns' way of taking the temperature of painting